So in this example, it's kind of interesting. We want to put a yes over in this column. So let's call this yes, no, or true, false. We want to put a true for all the countries that have at least one city with a population greater than 10 million. So all these cities are more than 10 million, and this is just sample. It could be outdated population data. But from here down, this is the last city in our list. It's sorted from largest to smallest. The last city with a population greater than 10 million. So Paris has less than 10 million, and there are no other cities from France up here with a population of greater than 10 million, so this would be a false. But some countries, like for example India, we would put a yes here or a true here and a true here, because there are cities within the same country, India, at the top here, that have a population of greater than 10 million. There's actually two of them. So one here and one here. So as long as there is at least one city per country with a population greater than 10 million, then we want every city in that city to say a true over here. So cities with population greater than 10 million. That's the first thing that we want to do. So we'll just put as a little column header greater than 10 million. So the formula to do that is to say and this will evaluate to true or false. And this number is greater than 10 million. Put the bracket, press enter. So it gives us simply a true or false. We drag that all the way down, and as I go down, this is going to change to false. Right there. So now it says false. But what it's not telling us is, well, what if a different city within this country has a population greater than 10 million? We know it's true for these two, for India. We know it's true for USA, New York City, and for sure it's true for China. These two cities are less than 10 million, but there are other cities within China that have a population greater than 10 million. So we want to see true over here and over here, and here as well. Colombia does not have a city with greater than 10 million, so we want to see a false here. So let's go to the next step. We want to now build a helper column with a country and yes, no, or let's use true or false instead. So I will say country and true, false. So we have to do something here, and if it's the first time you've ever seen this, it's a bit tricky to understand, but you'll understand it by the end of the video. We want to put together these two things. We want to say, take this value, and when I use the ampersand, it's a way of numbers, you use the plus symbol to add, but with text you use this ampersand to say, take this value and just put it with the next value here. So I press enter, and now those two words together, let me just make this a bit smaller so you can see it properly. Those two words are now put together in one cell. So take this value and take this text value, put it together here. Drag that down, and you'll see why we're doing this in a minute. It will make perfect sense. So now we do a VLOOKUP. We want it to say true as long as any city in this country is a population greater than 10 million. So these are obviously all true. But when we get down to the bottom of the list, these cities are all less than 10 million. But if there is a larger city in that same country, like this, here we have this city in China. We know there are some cities in China with a population greater than 10 million, so we want to see a true in this cell. So here is the trick to do that. Let me actually go to the bottom and start the formula on one of these cells. So China. So we know we were expecting to see a true in this cell, even though this particular city, the population is less than 10 million, but there are others greater than 10 million. So we just have some strange requirements here. So we say equals. We want to do the VLOOKUP. That's the whole point. An interesting example of the VLOOKUP. Now we want to say take true. We want to look for true China anywhere in here. So as long as we don't care how many, as long as there's one. So we have to just type in true, and true, typically text has to be within quotes like this. But true is a sort of an exception to the rule because it's a special true and false special values that a computer understands, yes or no. So I say true, and then I use this symbol again, the concatenation symbol. It's to put two text items together. So if it's numbers, obviously you do this, the plus symbol, to add them. But when it's text, we use this special symbol. So now I say I'm looking for true, and I'm looking for China. Those two things put together. And where am I looking for that? That's where, if you've seen my VLOOKUP video, the table array. This is where we are looking. This part is what we're looking for. So we're putting those two things together, and we're hoping to find it in this column. So now the table array, I'm going to highlight these two cells. I'm going to hold down the Control key, hold down the Shift key, go up to the top. There's no spaces, so it jumps all the way up there. So when you do this, if you maybe you haven't seen my VLOOKUP video, but it's saying look in column C for these two things together, the word true and the value in that cell. So the third argument, I press the comma, it could be a semicolon on your machine. Column index, what do I want to see as the answer? So remember, we want to see true or false. So if I put a 1, we would get this as our answer, if it's true. If I put a 2, we would get the value over here because it's the second column. Column C, it would be a 1. Let me move this out of the way. Column D would be a 2, so we want a 2. And that last argument that a lot of people forget is really important here. We want false or a 0. We definitely want to say false, exact match. Don't try to guess. So I press enter, and here it is. It's true because there is a city, at least one city in China, that has a population greater than 10 million. So if I were to go back in here in the formula bar, highlight, press this little thing down here, look up value. What really is this? Well, I can press the F9 key on the keyboard, and it shows that we're looking for true China in this column, right? Because we're looking, our range is column C and column D. And you always look, the VLOOKUP always looks in the first column. And the answer, we're specified at 2. So we couldn't put 3 or 4, that would be an error message because there isn't a third or fourth column. There's only 2 columns in our range. So it has to be a 1 or a 2. We put a 2, meaning we want to see the value here. So I'm just going to press the escape key, and we get back to that formula. Now I'm simply going to drag this down. So none of these countries, this NA means I can't find any. I can't find, let's go back in here, highlight this, press the F9 key. I can't find true Venezuela, meaning in this column, meaning there are not any cities in Venezuela that have a population greater than 10 million. So that's NA for all of these. None of these countries have that. China does. I'm just going to copy, Control Shift up, paste that in. And obviously these are all true because it's the city itself right here, Tokyo, greater than 10 million. All of these are going to be true. This is where it changes. So our data tells us that France doesn't have any cities with a population greater than 10 million, and this is sorted descending, so that's pretty obvious here. But let's go down a ways. True, China, China, India, China, China, Pakistan, China, all these cities. Vietnam does not. There's no cities population greater than 10 million. Scroll down a ways again, and we just see all the different results. Canada doesn't have any cities greater than 10 million population. Mexico does. This one doesn't. Monterrey, Mexico. That's false. But, so that's false for this one. But Mexico City near the very top does. So that's why we get the true here. So just to review this, the first thing that we had to do was put in the value for this current row, right? True or false. Then we add the two things together. When you add text together, you use that ampersand just to say take this value, the false, and sort of push the other value with it. So they're side by side. And now over here, we're just saying look for those two things, the word true and the country. So I press F9. I see what's in there. As long as we find true Mexico anywhere in this column, then we're going to get a true. So let's go to the top. And where is true Mexico? It's right there. So there is one that says true Mexico. And I mean, there's lots of interesting requirements that you get out there. And this is one of the examples of using a VLOOKUP.